Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts Matt, Steve, and Jeff. G'day, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm back for two weeks in a row.
Woo. Yes, rock and roll.
On a roll.
Yeah.
Getting the band back together.
It's good to be back. Things are starting to die down a little bit, which is giving me a bit more bandwidth, which is good.
Cool.
Have to keep you two guys in line.
You have to.
Interesting topic we've got this week. Is fat contagious? Is obesity contagious? Can you catch it? I mean, like, this is a pretty crazy sort of a concept here, Matt. So I'll let you lead away.
It is crazy, and it's going to be a bit of a strange podcast because...
Controversial much?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we're not claiming anything. Like, we're not making a... Well, I don't think we are. This is one of the weird things. So let me give you a bit of background. I wanted to make a joke. Okay, so I was planning to do an April Fool's Day joke.
We had a few good ones.
Yeah,
we'll save something.
I wanted to build up a big scenario or build up this story or an alarmist, sensationalist kind of news press as part of a April Fool's trick, where I wanted to kind of use the evidence that we got to show that obesity is potentially contagious, that you might be able to catch the fat bugs.
Do you remember a few years ago when Dick Smith did it with the iceberg that he towed into Sydney Harbour, and there was that coffee company that said that they had developed a white bean that actually you didn't need milk to have, and apparently their phones went off the hook crazy. People didn't recognise that it was a joke. But anyway,
I've never been the same since an April Fool's Day trick when I was a baby, because they said I grew up in Mackay, North Queensland, and they put on the radio that there's a whale beached at the harbour, and so my mum was so excited to take me down and look at it that she actually fell down the stairs and threw me over the veranda. Yeah, man, I busted my head open. She broke her arm. So April Fool's Days is something I've been meaning to get back at everyone else.
It's dangerous. Don't do April Fool's Day.
Yeah. So anyway, but what my plan was is to scare the hell out of everyone by saying basically you can catch fat, that you could catch the bugs that create obesity. And the joke part of it was we were going to release the podcast on a Friday. This year, April Fool's Day was on a Monday. I was going to say, come to the webpage on Monday for your free fat away spray. You know, like they were going to give you make up a bit of an antimicrobial that will actually kill off the bugs that contribute obesity, because now that we've worked out it's contagious. Yeah. But the funny thing is to make a decent podcast out of that and to make it a believable April Fool's Day, we did a little bit of research to create some story around it and some potential references. The freaky thing is I don't really know now whether we have actually made a big discovery and that fat might actually be contagious, or whether we're going to have a discussion today about how you can use scientific data to prove anything you want. It's one of those, we could actually be the first people to ever announce this as a new discovery, or we could... It's just a strange thing, because in the creating of the evidence, I mean, it's really hard to disprove this hypothesis now through the science. The science backs our weird-ass pretend hypothesis.
Well, like I like to say, this is theory craft or a hypothesis, and we're sort of relatively loosely, well, actually maybe not that loosely putting it out there, because let the evidence speak for itself, Matt. I mean, this is how obviously discoveries come through. Now, then the cool thing is as well too, we might have some evidence and information come to light because of this podcast. You can actually either support or disprove this theory.
Right. I mean, might help someone, so it's worth sharing.
Might help someone.
There's some fascinating stuff though.
Absolutely, and it's not a big stretch to say that obesity is somehow genetic, okay, or you're predisposed to it. And remember, most of your genes in your body are in your gut. There's more genes in your gut than there are in cells in the body. There's more cells in your gut than there are cells in your body, but there's vastly more genome in your gut. So if your gut can change and it's full of bacteria that have all these genes, it's quite plausible.
And those bacteria aren't you. So where it all started is obesity's recently been redefined as a disease. So then if we look at a disease, what type of disease is it? It's either a metabolic disorder, or metabolic disease, or a genetic disease, or is it an infectious disease? And that's where we started, just with a bit of a joke, because we started seeing this pattern in the microbiome that contributes to obesity. Now, if we consider what I just said, that obesity as a disease is either metabolic, meaning it's created by hormonal issues or inflammatory mediators and that sort of stuff, creating a particular body profile that would create obesity, or is it genetic? But if we realise that this hormonal profile, all of these things in your body that create obesity, and what Steve-O just said, the genetic profile of the bugs compared to the genetic variability within us, it actually goes to show that it's not so much a metabolic disorder and it's not so much of a genetic disorder, but it could easily be an infectious disorder. So it actually could be a metabolic infection. So we can actually coin the word metabolic infection and start to look towards this sort of thing, because it's kind of freaky. We'll show you some of the evidence.
Well, I was going to say, Matt, have you got some of the things I guess that we've taken for granted now, where we can show how the microbiome can be infected from or changed by the environment?
Yeah, well, we'll start from the beginning, because a lot of our evidence initially to show that bugs can infect you and grow inside you come from babies. So when a baby's born sterile, so a baby's got no bugs. And then as the baby goes through the birth canal, it gets its first mouthful of bugs. Those actual mouthful of bugs will grow and colonize and reproduce inside the baby. Those bugs that baby gets will determine their metabolic profile, to the point that now they can predict someone's future metabolism by the guts they acquire early in life. For example, natural birth, a baby goes head first through the birth canal. It squeezes, it's pretty tight. It squeezes out all the amniotic
49
fluid.
years ago for me, so I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I watched it recently.
My earliest memory was being shot out of a cannon at high velocity.
Really? No. Well, and did your face smack something? Because you could have had a former life memory from sperm. Hey, anyway. So you go through the birth canal, it squeezes all the amniotic fluid out, and then the bug gets a mouthful of the mucus and everything, and a skin coating of all the mucus. And that actually is full of bugs, and those bugs will infect the baby and then grow based on when the food comes in and everything. The babies that are born not natural, babies born C-section, they actually just pick up the bugs from the hospital. Okay, so whatever the skin and whatever's on the surface of the hospitals and on people's fingers, whatever's all over the skin of mum and all that sort of thing. It takes about 6 months for a baby born C-section to get the same numbers and diversity of bugs as a child born natural. But if you ask, and then what they've recently shown with these babies, mum's microbial flora through the birth canal is totally dependent on mum's environment, where she lives, where she's been, where she grows, what she eats, and everything like that. So basically what we're saying is your mum's metabolic profile will determine the microbiome, and the microbiome will infect the baby, and that microbiome will determine the baby's future metabolism.
So if a mother is not eating well, overweight,
or gestational diabetes, that sort of stuff.
That sort of thing, it could potentially make the child overweight.
Even if she's not chronically obese.
Yeah.
Even if she's been through a bad period of time with regards to immune suppression, which is common during pregnancy, at the same time as a changing diet, the bacterial diversity changes. The baby can inherit the obesogenic microbiome. So basically saying that the fat bugs that she's accumulated while she got built up during pregnancy can be infected into the baby, and then those bugs are then grown by the food that baby eats. So we have a look at childbirth. That's a very obvious example of how we can get infected by bacteria, and those infected bacteria could be either obesogenic or maintain a lean body or a fat body,
So we should be able to compare this in lots of twin studies, shouldn't we, in kids?
Yeah, so basically with twins then, what you'll find is you can get fat twins and skinny twins and stuff like that. And so if you have a look at identical twins, they have no more similarity in their gut microbiome than a non-identical twin, meaning that the genetic material does not determine your microbiome, that your environment. And so the only time you get twins with the same gut flora and exactly the same body shape are the ones that live together. They get constant contamination and close contact. They live in the same environment. They eat the same foods. Then they'll get the same actual microbiome. Otherwise, there's no real pattern between twins' gut health, and that's why you can get a fat twin and a skinny twin because of the bugs that have infected their body. It's kind of crazy, hey? And then what about the funniest studies is when they do it to rats. So they get twin rats and stuff. So they show rats have got the same genetic material. And what they can do is they can infect a rat with the microbiome from an obese person, and it'll make that rat obese. And they can put the microbiome of a lean rat in a lean person into the other twin and make them lean.
Yeah.
But the craziest thing about rats is they share poo, and the animal studies. Sorry, I'm waffling a lot, but it's kind of exciting.
No,
what you got to understand is animal studies. It's really, really hard to do microbiome studies on animals, because what happens is animals cross-contaminate. Animals eat each other poo, they're licking all these surfaces and they're doing all that sort of stuff. So what happens is in these twin studies with the rats, if they isolated the rats, so if they went and got a human fat person's microbiome and put it into a rat and made it fat, and they had the other lean rats, they wander around, they share water bowls, and they eat each other's poo and everything. The fat rats became lean, and the lean rats become fat. This shows that you can actually be infected by the microbiome that makes you fat. Just as in that situation, you could be infected by the microbiome that might make you lean. But what we're saying is a potential metabolic infection here, that you can be infected by a bug that changes your metabolism. And what we're showing is examples of environmental bugs, and that our actual exposure to bugs through soil and skin and off the surfaces and on the outside of our foods and that will actually determine your microbiome more than genetics and hormones and everything. And that microbiome can contribute to obesity.
Now, that opens a can of worms. Now, we're known since the 50s that giving antibiotics to animals makes them fat, and that's directly due to the gut. I mean, because they used to give antibiotics widely to, like chickens that live together so they don't get infections, but it massively increases their weight gain because it causes dysbiosis.
But it's not so much of a stretch, Steve. I mean, if someone's sick and they're sneezing and coughing, or what other form of contagion, your body can obviously assimilate that, and then that contagion can obviously get to work in your body. So to think about that, I mean, obviously we're not saying it's the only cause. It's not like you're skinny one day and then you come across some of these Firmicutes from somebody else or something. There's got to be food. There's got to be a system of an infection. It's got to take root. So, but it's an interesting premise.
Well, the funny thing is, under the right circumstances, we've got adequate evidence to suggest that you can acquire a bug. Yeah, and that bug can live inside you. We had a bit of debate. Steve and I were sitting there debating definitions, because this is the whole thing. A lot of science is based on assumptions, and a lot of theories are based on actual definitions. So you've got to create a definition of something. But the definition of infection is what we were discussing. And what was your analogy with the weeds? I thought it was fascinating.
Oh, okay. Well, a weed is a plant that grows in an area it's not supposed to. It's not like a weed is this plant, because you could harvest.
But most dandelion. Of our herbs are leaves.
Like taraxacum or dandelion. That's considered, quote, a weed, but a lot of people grow it as a harvest now to make dandelion. It's good for your liver. So if you're harvesting it, it's not a weed all of a sudden. The stupid gum tree that's growing in the middle of it, that would become a weed. You know what I mean? So it's not the actual bug. And the interesting thing about bugs in the gut now is we have a mechanism of how we know it causes obesity. Do you want to talk about that now or later? Or?
Oh, hang on a sec. Let me just finish the story, because there's some other really cool things. Because what we're finding is that migration creates variability, but isolation creates predictability. And we got really cool studies talking about geography. For example, if you have a look in the past, places like Japan, places like Japan, they always used to say Japanese people are skinny, and they eat a lot of rice, and they drink a lot of green tea, and there's so many, and they have a lot of soy and stuff like that. There was a lot of talk back. Remember when we were studying back, you were 100 years before me, but back when we were looking in the 80s and 90s and all that sort of stuff, and we started learning all these sort of things, they used to talk about epidemiological studies and say that these people eat a lot of these foods and they stay lean. Let's do what they do.
The blue spot studies and that sort of stuff, for longevity and what
just weird ones. And what they've found is in the past, the soil and that sort of stuff and the environment around Japan had very low levels of Firmicutes. Okay. Now, Firmicutes are the strain of bugs that are linked to making you fat. They make you bigger. They're what we call obesogenic bacteria. So in the past, there was bugger all Firmicutes living in the environment within Japan. So because of that, they had bugger all Firmicutes living in their digestive tract, which means when they ate things like rice, it didn't have the same calorie yield. That when they test the soil in other places like Samoa and Tonga and New Zealand and places where people can get quite large, and they linked it to the thrifty gene, which is an insulin-based gene, they find in those areas they've got a totally different gut flora and they've got totally different environmental flora, and therefore when they eat rice they can get fat. But another country that doesn't have these bugs, and coincidentally a lot of lactose intolerance through the Asians. So they had no Firmicutes, which includes things like lactobacillus that are responsible for lactase and your ability to break down milk. Now they've got Firmicutes everywhere. Stevo's found some cool stuff on Japan. What did you find
Japan,
there?
Fantastic studies. Is that when the Japanese moved to Hawaii, or this is what is in this study, is that they became obese, and everyone just thought, like I did in the early days, they adopted a Western diet, which is the worst diet you can adopt. But what they found when they said, okay, let's look at these guys' gut bugs, and they found a severe deficiency in Bacteroides, and particularly 2 strains. I won't name them here, but 2 strains of Bacteroides which keep people lean.
Yeah.
And so,
a relative abundance of the Firmicutes.
Yes, a much higher Firmicute ratio. And Firmicutes are obesogenic because they do all sorts of things in the metabolism, and they increase hunger, they increase ghrelin in the body, so you feel more hungry. So, if you ever seen those people who go to a Chinese restaurant, they go, oh, I ate Chinese rice and I'm starving 5 minutes later. You've seen those sort of people?
Yeah.
They're the high Firmicute ones.
That's me. But that's crazy, What we're finding is when we talk about traditional sort of stuff and find that people had a particular way of eating foods and maintaining a body shape, it was more to do with their microbiome interacting with those foods. Now when we find those people migrate to other places, and even if they don't exclusively go to a Western diet, a lot of them keep the certain habits and they eat the same sort of foods. And
traditional.
Probably go out to restaurants to have the other stuff. But they eat a lot of their food and they'll blame our produce and saying it's not the same as theirs. Oh, the Greek guys we work with, it's only Australia, the produce is so terrible, And in Greece, you can smell it walking around the corner, the tomatoes are fresh. That was more
Italian.
Greek. That's because around the corner was Italy.
Right.
So basically... we're just saying these traditional people, they blame this, but it's actually the change in the microbiome. Now, on the other side, these places like Japan are getting an obesity epidemic, and they're blaming Western culture and Western foods for infiltrating their perfect system and now making them obese. Maybe it's not the foods, maybe it's the people.
Well, and
because we have more migration. So now, I think I've alluded to this fact in previous podcasts that I believe humans are in existence because we have longer legs. We're vectors for transport for our microbes. So they've tricked us into migrating and spreading, just so they can survive.
Mentioning Japan as well too. I mean, I know that there's going to be a severe disruption in the environment around Fukushima. I mean, I'm wondering what that's going to be doing with the Firmicutes.
Well, what's that going to do?
No, I'm glad you mentioned that point, because when I'm talking about a lot of these environmental bugs, we're talking about the stuff that grows in the soil.
Yeah.
But what's also happening to our soil? Remember the EU? They did studies recently through the EU where 40%, or no, was it 80%, or some stupid well, there's a large percentage of all statistics are made up on the spot, and there is a large percentage of the soil through Europe that is all contaminated with Roundup.
Well, they're starting to fight back against that now. Also, there's 6 states in the United States as well too that have banded together after the poisoning of a major waterway, which are actually taking on Monsanto to throw it out. Which, again, we look at the premise that in nature there is a natural ratio of bugs. As soon as you start bringing in things like pesticides and herbicides and radioactive materials and toxins and all the rest of it, everybody knows they don't belong in our environment. And the side effects from these things, which are not studied, that's the smoking. That's the time bomb, the ticking time bomb. That's the thing that we have to really be concerned about.
It's amazing. I found a study supporting that Monsanto, Roundup is quite safe, and I showed Matt this one. And guess who wrote it?
Monsanto.
Oh, how did you know? You've been amazing. They said, "Oh no, there's no data, no, very, very." And they said, "Oh, this study that showed that it was really bad."
They were just talking about glyphosate.
I know.
They don't talk about the blend.
Yeah. Space.
So space station's cool because in space station they're worried about infection, and so what happens? They sterilise the space station. They sterilise the bucket first, but the only people allowed on there are people that fit a certain BMI. And it's kind of interesting because that's sterilised, but then what they do is they collect all the dead skin, they collect all the stuff out of the filters, and then what they got to do is constantly measure. They measure what is actually found in their vacuums, felt in their filters, what's found in their poo, and all that sort of stuff to see what's the biggest risk. Now, what they found is there's certain bugs that are extremely resilient and can survive even the extreme temperatures of temperature changes and that sort of stuff of outer space and that sort of thing. And they're mainly these Firmicutes.
Why is it Lactobacillus that survive?
Staphylococcus, which is a Firmicute, is a big problem on the space station. But the reason why they do these studies, and this is a funny thing, this is why as I'm going through this hypothesis thing, what a crazy hypothesis. But then all of a sudden then you're reading things like NASA will analyse the microbes that are found in these things because of their fear of contamination and infection. Man, you got to check this out too. Again, talking about contamination, this is a really. I don't often read quotes, but this one was back to those animal studies. But spread of microbes between cages within isolators interacting. Oh, this is boring. I'm not going to read it like that. Basically, they're saying this is with animal studies. This is so important, to major importance for design of animal studies, and indicates that environmental transfer of microbes between individuals may affect host metabolic rates. So, and that was done in 2017. These other and all the NASA studies are saying we're only testing this because we want to find out the likelihood of these commensal bugs, the normal bugs that we all class as friendly, of infecting the astronauts and screwing with their system.
Do you want to know the biochemistry why they can survive in space?
Yeah,
because Firmicutes bring out spores which are highly resistant to temperatures, pHs, and they can survive on meteorites. But bacteroides don't shoot out spores.
It always makes me go when I was younger as well too. Man, I wish eating chocolate made you thin and fit and
Cacao does.
Yeah,
there's no such thing
Just
as
not
beer
the nice-
biceps.
but
is there?
no. But the thing is though, is that why is it always the bastard stuff
Bicep curl.
that seems to survive? Why is it when you have antibiotics, they're the ones that seem to be resistant?
Well, it's funny because we pick on Firmicutes a lot on this.
I mean, I know that they're important. Like everything Matt says, in the right ratio,
Yes.
they're incredibly important.
If I was starving in the bush, I'd want more Firmicutes. There you
Like
go,
a
'cause
hunter-gatherer?
Yes, because then I would get more out of my food and that increased the calorific value of food. That's a good thing for survival, bad thing in Western cultures.
Oh, another example of infections of bugs. Hunter-gatherer, because I just remember when I said hunter-gatherer, there was these
segue.
studies on hunter-gatherers for their microbial diversity and showed that these hunter-gatherers have an awesome diversity. They got all sorts of bugs, so that makes them tougher and makes them capable of getting different nutrients out of different foods.
So
One of the
different
funny
seasons.
things is they got all these evidence of these particular hunter-gatherer group, and they might have strains of bacteria that disappear for years. They're totally gone from their stool and they cannot find these things, and all of a sudden they're back. And then when they go and question them and going, oh yeah, this fruit hasn't seasoned, the wet season have been wrong, we've missed out on this plant, it hasn't fruited for years. Then years later, when this thing fruits, their whole gut flora changes again because they've had exposure back to these bugs that live on this particular plant. Again, evidence that these things can come into the body with the right environment, grow and change your metabolism. Because that's the big thing, these things all change your metabolism. And if obesity is a disease, and we know the hormones and the genes and all that sort of stuff associated with it are mainly influenced by the microbiome, then maybe it is an infectious disease. And this is the weirdest thing that keeps coming out of this, man.
Yeah, so what makes you predisposed to these infections then?
So what you need a series of 3 things, I reckon. Geez, your segues are amazing, Steve.
You just
He's got cheat sheets.
I
I was
just
just
seen
about to say.
this.
See, I kind of skim read this crap, whereas Steve studied
he's
it.
following, you know,
Yeah.
he's like taking little bullet points. I feel so much pressure
You're
on me
cheating now, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm asking you.
No, it's not often I actually create some notes for these things, but this is a kind of full-on story, you know?
Yeah.
You have to
Anyway,
get your ducks in a row.
so I only got one. Oh, what do you mean?
I don't know.
I think nuts.
It's a weird saying.
Yeah, it is.
It is, I don't know what
Actually, it's really weird when you think about your nuts sit next to each other.
No, ducks.
Because others your legs.
It's your nuts.
Yeah. Other getting them in a row. It's like,
Now you got to get your ducks in a row so you can shoot them all. You know,
Yeah.
this is sort of the I'm not into shooting ducks, but this is the saying where it comes from.
what about nuts?
Oh, I'm not into shooting nuts. either.
Anyway.
I'm not into nuts at all.
No.
Anyway,
No.
sorry. Anyway, let's back to this thing. So to get a metabolic infection, we need a series of events. It's not like you come in contact with something and then you've just got it. But under these following circumstances, it is actually possible. Number 1. I said
Dramatic pause.
Yeah, that wasn't a dramatic pause. That was indigestion. I get pretty excited sometimes. And I just
Talking
like,
about gut
number
bugs.
1.
Yeah.
Whoa. There's like an internal drum roll that come out my nose. Predisposition to infection. So you need to be predisposed to infection. But that's not that hard. I mean, we get colds and flus all the time, you know, so we're talking about the same sort of thing. But if you've got dysbiosis, which means you've got an imbalance in your gut flora already, where you've got available adhesion sites and you're lacking diversity, where you don't have the defense mechanisms to block them, or you might have an overgrowth of parasites or something that's keeping your allergic inflammation up, or you might have a lot of allergies that's keeping all that, and that keeps your immune surveillance down. We know for a fact people with HIV and on immunosuppressant drugs even run the risk of getting infected by acidophilus.
Wow.
So we know with someone enough immune suppression, then probiotics will infect their body. Because the definition of infection is the weird thing. It's where we were referring to before with the weeds. It's kind of like it depends on whether it's good or whether we want it or not. The definition of infection is not isolated to the bug. It's not isolated to the location. It's just whether we decide it's an infection or whether it's a colonization, you know? So basically we need predisposition to infection, which could be the hygiene hypothesis, allergies, dysbiosis, antibiotics, post-food poisoning, being on on the pill, lots of allergies, those sort of things, which sounds like a lot of people.
You could argue, upwards of 90%, I'd say, because immunosuppression can be as simple as not sleeping.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Or being stressed.
Yeah. So, but you need a certain, you need available sites. So you need the predisposition to infection and probably a combination of the above things. So dysbiosis plus immune suppression plus increased allergies or something, but, and like I said, I don't know the answers to this. This started out as a joke. It just kind of turned into something a bit bigger, you know. Number one's predisposition to infection you need. Then you need substrate availability. So what that means is you need something for them to feed on. So once they go in, they need to feed. And they feed on carbs. So far, all you need to do is be predisposed to infection with your immune system out of whack or your gut's out of whack. Then you need to have an available source of carbs running through your gut for them to feed on. And number three, you just need exposure.
Yeah.
And we can get exposure from most places, but typically the environment, other people, soil, skin, food, supplements. Steve-O reminded me to throw in supplements because a lot of people supplement with Firmicutes.
They do.
Lactobacillus and even food supplements, yogurts and things like that.
Yeah, even to this very day, people still supplement with probiotics. They want more diversity in the gut, so they give one probiotic.
I know. And lots of it. And they all compete for how many of this one bug
1
we can
billion.
throw in.
I've seen 100 billion. That's the most I've seen.
So you can get exposure to obesogenic materials from anything you touch, but this is one of the freakiest, grossest, awesome things.
No.
Pause.
Drum roll.
Pause for dramatic effect. Yeah, I don't know.
I am going to show you people that are watching YouTube and this camera guy over here this freaky table
with the power of
Well,
yeah, we might actually be able to.
Yeah,
I'll explain it.
We'll get a cut
I'm going to
scene.
explain it.
No,
I'm
we'll
not just going to show.
No, we'll get a cut scene of it going.
Here's the punchline.
Yeah.
Hey, for you podcast listeners, what do you think? No. No, let me tell you about it. What this picture actually shows, I've got a picture here that where they went into gyms, they went into the gym and swabbed everything to find out what bugs live on what gym equipment.
No.
Yeah, man. And it's freaky because I'll probably get in trouble with a lot of this. But,
no. This is
the big thing is if you want to lose weight, most people think we go to the gym and we do cardio. So I'll drive to the gym and then I'll get onto the treadmill.
Which is useful, gets you nowhere.
Or the power stride. So the power stride's also that one where you don't get the jolting. So if you're overweight and you've got bad knees and ankles, sore feet.
Yep.
Like I get those feet stuff, and I'll get on the power stride now because it's so much easier, man. I can get a bit of momentum and relax in between strides too. But
good old Stairmaster, that was the
So what they did, they went through the gyms and they measured the levels of Firmicutes. They measured the Firmicutes that make you fat and the other bugs that make you lean and fit. And they measured the gym equipment. Toilet handle had a nice big variety. The leg press had a little bit of everything. The elliptical had a bit of everything. The power stride and the treadmill exclusively covered with Firmicutes.
Hang on. Firmicutes.
Firmicutes make you fat.
Right.
Okay, so Firmicutes are the obesogenic bugs. Now, treadmills and power strides, the handles and the surface of this machine is exclusively covered with Firmicutes, the fat-generating ones. Now,
bugs.
we have all these debates about, cardio for fat loss. Does it work? Doesn't it work? We have all these different things. Now, if you have a look down to the next one, dumbbells and stationary bikes had almost no Firmicutes. So when you have a look at dumbbells for resistance exercise and that sort, or the stationary bikes, the guys that the CrossFit guys use, those, or the high intensity interval training, and those guys use the stationary bikes and that sort of stuff. And that's hard work,
Yes.
So you see the stationary bike and dumbbell, almost no Firmicutes, and they're covered in the bugs that make you burn fat and build muscle, where the power stride and the treadmill is totally covered with the other. The other one that was probably halfway was Nautilus, and I don't know what the others are. But you'll see here that that is freaky. Now, one thing that I noticed in the gym, and I kind of see it all the time, I see it so much that I kind of ignore it now. I don't even see it. There's posters and there's videos and there's TVs saying, wipe down your machinery when you're finished, sterilise your machinery and re-rack your weights.
Yes.
So the funny thing is the moment I saw this paper, from this very moment, I actually get off the cardio equipment. I mean, I do, I probably going to sound like a bit of an arsehole, but I just go to the wall where they got the spray and the wipe stuff, and I just spray my hands and wipe it. Everyone thinks I'm a total loony. I'm probably on one of those Instagram gym fail pages of this goose that goes up and sterilises his hands after using the cardio equipment.
Yeah.
I go and sterilise everything, man, and then I run over, and hopefully there's some muscle guy that hasn't re-racked his weights. I just go and lick the dumbbell and then re-rack it. So the gym says to re-rack your weights and your gym says to sterilise your equipment. Maybe they were smarter than ever, and this is exactly why.
Wow.
You will improve your results at the gym if you re-rack your weights, or if you re-rack other people's weights, and you stop licking the treadmill.
So let's be clear here. The treadmill, for example,
Yeah.
it had loads of Firmicutes. What other bugs were on
None.
the treadmill?
No, there was nothing. It was only Firmicutes.
You took the words out of my mouth.
So
actually,
if you
Steve.
are-
the power stride in the treadmill, nothing.
But if you're predisposed to infection, so if
Yes.
you've got dysbiosis, which is a common finding in obesity, so if you've already got obesity, or if you've already got this dysregulation, because the people that are using the treadmills have either been told they've got heart disease or they're obese. Usually that's the reason why people use these things. It's not because they're fun and they've got to spare half an hour to stand around like an idiot. You don't do that otherwise. So these people typically get onto these machines for a particular purpose. And we're not talking the Stairmasters. We're not talking these other ones.
Shame, I would have loved to have seen.
And
the
don't forget,
Stairmaster.
these are the handles too. So these are the blokes that are holding the handles.
Yeah.
Not the guys running. There's some fit people on the treadmills that don't touch the machine.
Yeah, that's
You're not
it.
supposed to.
But if
you
you've
know,
got predisposition to infection,
Yeah.
you've got available carbs around the same time as you're training, and you get exposure by touching the machinery and the equipment, you can actually be reinfecting yourself with a bug that keeps your metabolism making you obesogenic, liberating more fuel out of your food you're eating than the other guy that's spending his time on the stationary bike and the dumbbells.
Okay, so let's play a scenario. Let's say someone goes to the doctor. Doc says, "Oh, you need more cardio because you're fat." You go to the treadmill. You run on the treadmill. You get home, have your low-fat, lactobacillus-enriched milk with your oats, carbs, with a bit of dry dates or sugar on it. How does that set up your Firmicutes?
Yeah, that's like may as well be an agar plate for. It may as well be like a little thing that we use to grow these bloody things.
Yeah.
That's like the perfect scenario for it.
And that's it. You're working against yourself because the question I've got is how contagious or how transferable are these Firmicutes and Bacteroidetes?
No, they're totally transferable. That's what we're saying. This is all the evidence showing that if they're in your environment, you're going to get them.
Right.
Like you can get these twins and that sort of stuff and just take them to different parts of the world and they will acquire different bugs depending on what they're... But a lot of it's to do with what you're eating.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like I said with those 3 points, if you were doing a low-carb diet, you didn't have those available of the carbohydrates, you were in that calorie deficit and that sort of stuff there, then you wouldn't have the fuel along to feed it. And if you didn't have the adhesion sites, you didn't have space in your gut from maybe an overgrowth of a parasite or dysbiosis like candidas or whatever, those sort of things can all predispose you. So it's a combination of events. So you've got to be susceptible, you've got to be predisposed, then you've got to have the food floating through your gut and you've got to have the exposure. But I mean, that's not
It's
it's not hard
premise.
to imagine.
The question I had, and I'll take this premise as worldwide. This sort of thing is, in the West.
It's an American study, but
right?
it'd be similar.
And we can delve into that in a minute. But you want to make every post a winner. You don't want to take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. You want to make sure that you're taking 5 steps forward if you're going to take 5 steps, right? So if you can eliminate taking lactobacillus and all the rest of it, taking probiotics, if you can cut that out of your diet so that you're not getting it from your food, if you can remove them out of your environment as well too, if you can then be choosing the right macronutrients that you need plus the right all that sort of stuff, great, then you're putting everything in your favor to succeed. So many people, as you say, are doing half things right, and then they're jumping on the treadmill, potentially affecting themselves.
Well, Steve-O said it in another podcast. He said
That's
he's
pretty
down,
funny.
He's down at gym like 4 or 5 in the morning, like every day, and doing his stuff.
I was this
and he
morning.
says it's not. He says there is a lot of overweight people there working really hard. So you can see these people getting up early. They're
not
doing
lazy.
the exercise. They're not lazy. They're not from lack. This is why we talked about, we did that Handbrakes to Health podcast and seminar, because we talked about it's not usually that people aren't trying hard enough. It's usually some sort of handbrake holding them back. So when you see those people at the gym, they're typically on the cardio. They're on the treadmills.
They are.
You have to admit that's anecdotal because, again, they could have only just started. They could be going home to a big bowl of marshmallows and Kellogg's, Cocoa Pops with milk and that. But, I'm liking it. I think it deserves...
So
one
we
of the
need
things
a
I think we
Fataway
can all
spray. So
agree.
just go up and spray them. And just as they're going...
But what we need, though, what we obviously need is this deserves further investigation to determine how much of an impact this potentially could have.
Well-
the question I had with the study, and I don't know if you know this or not, is Was this just a one-off snapshot into a single gym, or was this taken over a period of time?
It was done at a gym in America.
Yeah, it was over fitness centres, wasn't it?
Fitness centres.
Oh, centres.
Yeah, there was multiple samples taken.
Right.
But here's the interesting thing. There's another piece of the puzzle. We know how these Firmicutes cause weight gain. And there's a couple of mechanisms. The first one is that the Firmicutes, the fat ones, increase ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone. So these poor people, if they're infected with Firmicutes, go away, go home and go, I should diet. Oh, I'm too hungry. I'll just eat XYZ food. And they binge eat food or overeat certain food.
And in ghrelin studies, weren't they ones where they electrocuted the food and they still went back and ate it?
The rats.
Not the people. The rats, yeah. They didn't get that past the ethics committee and the people.
But rats, you put an electric current through a food and the rats still ate it despite because they were just that hungry.
Ghrelin is telling them you're starving. You need to eat or you will die.
You know what? I think that, I've always had a sweet tooth, and I know, we can obviously back this in terms of what we've done with the gut right.
What else? How else?
But since I've been using the gut right, my appetite seriously is, and I don't want this to freak out guys that are training and that need to eat the right consumption to keep their muscle up, but my appetite has reduced so much, especially my desire for sweet foods. It's pretty much all gone out the window.
Rebecca says that too.
My craving for savoury and proteins up. Yeah, my desire for sweets are gone.
Yeah, right.
Until I made my Rosella jam. That was amazing.
No, it was good, actually.
There is another mechanism.
Oh, yeah, keep going.
The Firmicutes.
So ghrelin makes you hungry.
Yes, so you feel more hungry when
we mentioned that the bastards make you crave what they love, which is
they can
sweets and
replicate
carbs. And
and
feathering their own
It gets worse because the Firmicutes break down soluble fibres. So you could be eating a good fruit, vegetable, loads of those things, and it makes soluble fibres which solubilize into 3 short-chain fatty acids: butyrate, propanoic acid, and acetate. So with the acetic acid type of it, that actually increases lipogenesis, or the production of new fat cells, directly from that short-chain fatty acid. So it makes fat. Literally.
So this is where, again, people could come around to the opinion that fruit is bad if it's high in those sorts of fibres, and if your gut bugs then start converting that into that kind of fuel.
Yeah.
But for someone like Mick or someone who's got a really good gut microbiome, fruit's not going to be a problem for them.
And
this is the catch too, though, just quickly, because we talked about how fruit can be bad.
Yeah.
Remember how we talk about how food has changed? So it's the ratios between the sugar and the polyphenols. So if you're eating fruit that naturally contains sugars and soluble fibres for the short-chain fatty acids, so you've got sugar and soluble fibre for the short-chain fatty acids, but if that's offset by the antimicrobial polyphenols, they starve those bastards from feeding on that fruit.
A big problem is that there's a chain of vegetable and fruit. I won't mention the name, but they're in all the shopping centres, and people are having these juices daily, and people eating a lot of fruit juices daily, and they've got virtually no polyphenols, and they're having a high load of sugar.
Yeah.
And those drinks actually
fibers,
can pass through the small intestine undigested and can feed the bacteria in there because it's too much sugar.
I agree, and that's it, because you're taking food out of the state. As you say, Matt, the way to overcome that would actually be to put some of the pulp back in, and obviously
don't drink
organic.
Anything you can eat.
But organic as well too, because obviously they're covered with pesticides and herbicides, which are just running rampant.
Really bad.
And you can see, obviously, and this is where coming out with a statement, if you like, or a new theory or a hypothesis is that hippopotamus is that you need to take into consideration all of those interrelational effects, and that is the hard part, because you've got so many variables that are happening. But I love this concept, I really do, and I think it's, as you said, starting off as a bit of a joke, Matt, but I think it's actually got some legs for further investigation.
And like Steve-O was saying too, that the ones that make you fat, they can even live in outer space. They live in these extreme conditions because they can still drop spores everywhere. So while you're relying on the other ones that make you lean to be actually alive and feeding on the surface of something to survive, they can't. But these other Firmicutes, they're much easier to transmit from person to person.
Exactly.
So what is that? So you said ghrelin. You said the short chain fatty acids make a lot of fuel, and that fuel that increases the amount of So when these Firmicutes feed on your soluble fibre, they make these short chain fatty acids that our body uses as fuel.
Yes, it does, because
so it increases our calorie yield from the food.
Yep, and also it increases propionate, which is propanoic acid, and that increases gluconeogenesis, which is a production of new sugar from amino acids.
Wow.
So
they make you eat sugar.
Yes.
They make you crave sugar.
Yep.
They convert fiber into fuel.
Yep.
That your body would use in competition to the sugar.
Yes.
Then what they also do is they convert your stored glycogens and
Yep.
any protein you're consuming through to more sugar.
Yep.
At the same time as one of the other short chain fatty acids increases the acetate production, increases lipogenesis, which is more vesicles or vehicles or storage sites for the extra energy as fat.
It makes cholesterol too. So,
Wow,
so
what a perfect trap.
Yeah. The scary thing about
Great if you're starving and a hunter-gatherer.
I mean, obviously, I've been very busy lately, and I said to the Human Resources Department that I actually need somebody to feed me because, a feeder. Someone that can actually, so that I can keep working.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, well, okay, no problem, Jeff. And would you also like a wiper? And I said, well, we could probably make it the same person so long as they use different hands. Yeah. And I said, no, stuff that. Let's just get two people.
Well, I don't want to get those hands confused.
No.
But can I tell you?
No, it's not happening.
Can I tell you it gets worse?
I got one for you too, Matt.
Can I tell you it gets worse with the Firmicutes? A little bit worse. You make gluconeogenesis and you make it out of protein. What if you're, asleep and you haven't eaten for 8 hours? Where does the protein come from?
Muscle.
Correct. And so you actually can break down muscle tissue and make more fat from it. And this is where anti-diabetic drugs like Metformin work. They work on the gut bugs.
So this old theory, I remember way back when in the 80s, the men, let's turn that fat into muscle. And of course, everybody who knows anybody goes, that's impossible. Fat cannot turn into muscle. But the premise was there, let's obviously get rid of the fat and build more muscle. Effectively, what you're saying there in reverse is that if your body cannibalizes your own muscle tissue effectively, it can utilize those sugars, feed those Firmicutes, which are going to upregulate the body's ability to burn, to store fat.
Via sugar.
Fasting blood glucose would be an interesting test then as a reflection of, because I always looked at, fasting blood glucose. So you have people that raise blood sugar in the morning.
Yeah.
I always used to think that they always said that's a diabetic problem, too much sugars and whatever. But I always looked at it as a liver problem because I knew that liver had receptors in there to measure the blood sugar, and that the liver would, if it didn't measure adequate sugar, it would then release the glycogen through gluconeogenesis into glucose, and then
it's also to do with liver insulin resistance. And so if the liver detects low sugar because it's insulin resistant, it makes more. And that's why diabetics wake up with blood
what we're
sugar
saying here is that it could be Firmicutes. So if someone's got an abundance of Firmicutes stimulating gluconeogenesis, so someone fasted blood sugar. Now, it may be fatty liver, it may be liver insulin resistance, but it could also be other forms of gluconeogenesis, such as an overgrowth of Firmicutes.
Yeah, and the other...
Because it's not what you're eating. Fasting glucose, we're measuring your blood sugar. You haven't eaten for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
And if you've got high blood sugar, it's coming from within your body. It's not coming from your diet. It's coming from your liver and your muscles.
Yeah, exactly.
And we always said, this is an indication liver works.
I love this though, because I can imagine the guys that are out there with the screw cardio. I mean, obviously we had Luke Lehman, who says no, because obviously you've got to look at the ventricles of the heart and the way that the body utilizes energy and blah 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 blah. But if you look at this, you could almost say, well, they could take this and go, see, you don't want to hit the treadmill.
This is what I'm saying.
You want to actually get more dumbbells. Mind you, stationary bikes in here, by the way. But what I was going to say, and the question I have for you, which is just an honest question, is that if you're exercising, and obviously we've spoken about how some gut bugs love carbon, and especially the Akkermansia, the one that's really great. So how does that fit into all of this then as well too? I mean, in terms of with the Firmicutes and killing them off and changing the gut biosis, the stationary bike, or the devil's tricycle, because it's funny, because Grant was saying he was using the treadmill to try and lose weight, and he even said he's actually gone nowhere for 3 weeks in terms of actually diet's been good. The only thing that he changed is he jumped onto the stationary bike, the one with the wind, it's not a Wingate bike, but that one.
Yeah.
I just call it the devil's tricycle. And he says obviously it's a different type of cardio, and again this is anecdotal only, but he says the weight started falling off him like no tomorrow now.
Yeah. He's not recontaminating himself with fatifying Firmicutes.
Again,
But this is what I'm saying. So to answer your question, Jeff, it's a very good point you mentioned, because what you've asked was how does supporting the growth of other bugs fix this?
Yeah.
So, for example, with Akkermansia, by feeding Akkermansia adequate carbon, the Akkermansia will grow and thrive.
Yes.
Now, the issues that we have with the microbiome obesity, and this is it's a really good point, because what happens is when we're talking about infection, we're talking about a massive overgrowth, or like your body's riddled with this stuff. In some of the cases of obesity, we don't actually see a massive abundance of Firmicutes, but we see a deficiency of bacteroides and deficiencies of things like Akkermansia. So it's a relative abundance of Firmicutes or a deficiency of the other bugs. Now, by increasing carbon in your mucus through carbon dioxide, which is breathing and panting, ketones, fat burning and that sort of stuff, you put a lot of carbon into the mucus. Those things feed Akkermansia and say that you're fine to produce energy. You guys keep doing stuff next to me. It's freaking me out.
I'm just showing you're correct.
I know I'm correct, Steve. I sent you that paper. I'm talking about it.
Oh, good. Okay, I was just showing if you wanted to quote figures and sound really intelligent.
No, I don't do that. That's not how I sound intelligent.
Okay,
80% of all figures are made up on the spot.
Well, what would be interesting as well too, I mean, again, for helping people, because I'm fascinated by this concept of the right food, avoiding the wrong foods, avoiding the environments in which you can get these things, promoting, again, we spoke about it a few podcasts ago, engineering the perfect gut. One of the ways to do it would obviously be to increase Akkermansia, because that's going to make you leaner. It's also going to attack. But
what about this? What about this? Okay, so imagine this. You've got a certain amount of Akkermansia in your body.
Yeah.
You're going on the treadmill. You're starting to pant a little bit. Yeah. You're starting to build up some carbon dioxide. The Akkermansia's going, man, this is awesome. I'm starting to really enjoy this. I'm starting to enjoy this. And then next thing you know, you get off the treadmill, you pick up your food and you eat it with your Firmicute covered hands, and you get the carbs coming in. So what we're saying is you might have done everything right to build up your Akkermansia and fix your gut, and that one simple process of not washing your hands after you, or licking that treadmill before you ate your oats and your post-workout drink, or your meal delivery or whatever, and you contaminated yourself with another bug and changed the environment in your mucosa, then this is what I'm saying. These are the things that might stop you from getting better. Not necessarily that you've went to the gym, you're a perfectly finely tuned athlete, you licked a treadmill and now you're fat. We're talking about people that are putting in all the effort, doing 80% of the stuff right. It's the 20% that can actually be inhibiting their results. So they might be doing everything right for Akkermansia and not actually getting it. And this might also link to the research with people that show if they do a form of cardio, which is actually a resistance exercise, where they're just basically doing low weight, not stopping and keeping their heart rate up while they use dumbbells and weights. They talk about high intensity. That's not really high intensity.
No, Devil's Tricycle definitely is.
Absolutely.
But and this was what the question is I guess if we could work out what the ideal exercise is to actually promote a certain type of gut bug. I mean, I don't know what produces the most amount of carbon and
high intensity and aerobic exercise, because aerobic exercise, you want a higher intensity for the Akkermansia. There's not many drugs that increase Akkermansia. Metformin's one, but there's not many to do it that way. So the best way is to do it naturally and exercise.
Ketos and intermittent.
Here's an interesting scenario for you. Let's say you're loaded with Firmicutes, like a lot of people are, most people are. They can't regulate their appetite. They go to the doctor, so I can't regulate my appetite. A lot of people go down gastric banding and these sort of surgeries. Maybe just because they've got too many Firmicutes, because they say I can't control my appetite. These people can't. They just eat a lot. And I've got family members in that scenario, and I've got added family members in that scenario. And I mean, there's lots of people doing this these days.
And they've been told by the doctor as well too, you've got to do this. So for years they're trying to stick to a diet and they just can't, or they don't get the result, or as I said, they're making the wrong decisions that they don't even know. They think they're doing the right thing. Let's say, for example, if this proves out to be true, they're jumping on the treadmill, they're reinfecting themselves. It's just so much hard work. And the doctor says, unless you lose 40 kilos, your risk of, heart disease and all this is going through the roof. So, of course, they make that decision, Steve. I've got a great deal of sympathy because they don't have all of the information.
I got an email this morning, and I'll show you guys later, a classic one. A lady, she's 47, and she was getting overweight on a diabetic program. She's type 1 diabetic. She said, I'll blow that. I'll restrict my carbohydrates. And she started losing weight, lost 18 centimetres and all that sort of thing. Her HbA1c, which is a diabetic marker, improved. Her fasting glucose improved. Went back to the doctor. The doctor refused to treat her because she's not following the diabetic diet.
She's no longer diabetic, probably.
Well, she's improving dramatically. Like all her markers and that. So there is a fixation out there in the medical fraternity where a lot of people are exposed to, where it's surgery or drugs or whatever the case may be.
And the diabetic diet is directly proportional to the blood sugar lowering effects of the drugs. So they go through and say, I'm going to give you this drug that's going to drop your blood sugar. Now I need you to eat more sugar so we've got something to drop. It's weird as thing, man. If you ever see a diabetic diet, it's messed up. Hey, man, I just thought of something.
What?
There's a couple of other products that we use, that we make that work really well for fat loss. Prototype 8 and Subcut. They're both antimicrobial. They both have antiseptic properties to them through the essential oils with the rosemaries and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe when these people are rubbing these things on at the gym, they're also sterilising. Imagine that. Imagine if there's an element of their success from actually sterilising their hands before they go and eat their food. Imagine, wouldn't it be just weird as how, like you're finding out, like
the mode of action is actually not what you think it is. Something else.
Well, you have a look at
which happened before.
Metformin. How long's Metformin drug been on the market?
63, I think it was first.
Yeah, because you would have been around.
Yeah, I was around then.
Well and truly in amongst it.
Yeah.
So now, and when did they? And to that paper you quoted from with Metformin, do they still start the paper by saying mechanism of action is totally unknown?
Well, they know the mechanism of action of that one, but they suggested it could be for the improvement of the gut. So they
This was a drug forever that they didn't know how it worked.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they didn't.
It did work.
A lot of drugs, they didn't know how they worked. I mean, Metformin has a sort of liver insulin sensitizing effect, so it means the liver doesn't produce glucose.
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. So we're talking about fasted blood sugar. Yeah. Your liver doesn't know what your blood sugar is because the antennas are smashed.
Yes.
And they believe Metformin fixed the antennas in the liver that stopped the liver from thinking you got blood sugar and releasing sugar. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
That's what they thought it did.
But what are we finding out now?
It improves your gut bugs. It increases bacteroides, increases Akkermansias, and reduces Firmicutes.
Okay,
and
can you tell me
through that process, that's by inhibiting Firmicutes, you're inhibiting gluconeogenesis, which is the exact same mechanism they described for 30 years about how it worked on the liver.
Yes.
It may not even do those things in the liver. It may be doing it through the Firmicutes.
Love
Absolutely.
it. Now, just so that people don't rush out and get Metformin, how will it kill you, Steve?
Oh no, it's actually a pretty decent drug.
Don't say that.
As far as drugs go, it's got it's got anti-cancer effects because of the anti-insulin
It increases
effects.
sex hormone binding globulin, which makes it really good for PCOS and people like that. So Metformin's not a bad drug for PCOS.
It's the number one choice for PCOS. It's one of those. It's like.
But if you want to build muscle and you're using Metformin as an insulin sensitizer, it's not an insulin sensitizer in that sense. It will not help you build muscle. It'll actually bind up your testosterone and stop you from building muscle.
There you go.
Where insulin can drive the sugar in, and insulin's an anabolic agent. Where Metformin they use with it as an insulin sensitizer, but it doesn't make sense.
So what do most people use Metformin for?
Diabetes.
Right.
Type 2 diabetes.
So the long-term side effects are actually not too bad on Metformin?
No, because it's been around forever, and it's shown that, well, there was a great study on type 2 diabetic because they get cancer all the time because they've got so much sugar floating around, and sugars feed cancers.
Of course.
They found that the group that were on Metformin got less cancer than a healthy control, like someone who didn't have diabetes. So that was the first discovery of Metformin.
The natural product that does the same sort of concept is berberine.
Berberine.
So berberine's our natural one that increases sex hormone binding globulin just like Metformin does. It actually improves insulin sensitivity. It reduces gluconeogenesis, which is how it creates the low blood sugar. Coincidentally, berberine also is one of the best ways of breaking down biofilm and killing off gut flora, in particular Firmicutes. So you could use berberine or you could use Metformin. They both taste like
and Metformin also increases adenosine monophosphate kinase. That's one of its other benefit things. The exercise in a bottle was the classic thing for that because the AMK is improved when you exercise. So there's some benefits for it. But again, I'd rather do it naturally as well. A lot of people take it instead, for diabetes, but they don't do the diet as well.
Right.
And that's where the sad thing is. It's kind of like I've got no problems taking a paracetamol if I had a headache, but I've kind of figure out why. Is that ever the classic one's the thyroid one? Oh, you got low thyroid. Oh, here's some thyroxine, but why? No one
exactly.
Even. It could be your bugs.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be it. Why couldn't it be?
And
your
we're
bugs?
starting to learn. It's freaky, hey. But and again, whatever we say, it just boils down to there's a holistic issue, meaning that there's multifactorial, and we need a holistic approach to treating it. So you need to always factor in diet, exercise, lifestyle as 80%, and then supplementation and that sort of stuff as tools and tricks to kind of smash it.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. That added up to 100%.
And 80% of stats are made up on the spot.
All right,
100% correct.
We're going way over time, but I've got to say, really interesting topic. I love the premise of this, and I'm looking forward to more research coming out on this, Matt, to obviously prove or disprove this theory. I think it's got legs.
If only we were giving a talk on gut bugs coming up in the near future, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
Segway master. I'm going to call you Master Segway. Is that a Master Segway?
It's just a hint of a reminder.
Hint of a reminder. He's got it written in green up there. Is that green or red?
It's green. That.
Well, that is green. I actually thought it was red, and I said green to be funny.
The Gut Right.
That's green.
The Gut Right mini seminar is coming to Philex in Sydney on the 21st of April at 2:45 p.m. on the wellness stage. So if you're coming to the show, make sure you step by and have a listen, as you don't need a ticket for the seminar itself, just to get into Philex. We'll be talking about new discoveries of the microbiome, which are showing a common theme that could help us to explain rising health concerns like allergies, obesity, and autism. That's you guys.
You're doing it too, aren't you?
No, I'm useless at that kind of stuff. Yeah. People come to see the knowledgeable people, not me, on how you can fix it and the tools you can use to help get your gut right. ATP Science will also have a stand at the show. Come and have a chat to the crew. That will be at stand E17. Can't wait to see you all there. That didn't sound.
It says here that you're here.
We're here.
The tools you can use.
Oh, shut up. I'm not available for everyone.
Well, how much is this? How much does it cost?
It's free, Steve. But you've got to get into the seminar.
And there's only 70 seats as well too. So it's first and best dressed. So we're at $245 on the wellness stage. And we're going to be at the show. I think Steve, you're going to be there.
I'm going.
Matt,
yeah.
I think I'm going to go there down on the Friday.
You are?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going.
Okay.
I spoke to Elsa this morning. I have anxiety issues with people and planes and traffic.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I get nervous. Like, people don't get in my way.
I say la vie, man. It's just I fall asleep.
Right.
But what I was going to say that get down there early. We'll obviously, and we've also got a new product that we're launching down there, and we've snuck it in by stealth. It's a stealth launch. It's not. I shouldn't say we're not. It's not a big deal because it is actually a big deal.
Just tell them what it is.
No.
Oh.
No, we're not.
Lucky I was about to.
Yeah. No.
I've been telling everyone.
Shit. Don't do that.
I thought it was a stealth launch.
It is a stealth launch.
Oh, so it's not stealth.
The opposite. But no, so and that'll be cool. And it's something again, Matt, that you've been rabbiting on about for years that people need. And
I said I want it.
Yes.
I think you go, I want it, I need this, I want to make it for me. And we've been using it for years because we wanted it.
Yeah. So anyway, gentlemen, we've got to wrap it up.
Yeah, I know.
Wrap it.
Let's wrap it. Oh, no.
What? I was doing the
Gut,
right thing.
right, baby. Do you know Tony still can't get that out of her head?
You poor thing.
I know. I think she
I'll
wakes
come
up
in,
in a
bring
cold
my
sweat.
guitar and we'll do it live again. We'll do another one.
Yeah. Are you going to perform under pressure for us?
Oh, I always perform under pressure, mate. You know, getting married in a few weeks.
That's not what Beck says. Anyway, all I was going to say, mate, is thanks, guys.
Yes.
And we'll be back next week.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Just, you made it weird.